Hey everybody, welcome to Core Mentor. I'm Daniel. This channel is all about overcoming your challenges and achieving your goals. I love to dive into topics around that. So if it sounds like something you like, go ahead, hit that subscribe button, stay tuned because I'm going to be pumping out some good videos on these topics. And today, what we're talking about is the very popular, very buzzword, trauma. Wow! Trauma. What does it mean? That's one of the first things I wanted to get into is that word. Whenever someone says I have trauma, I'm traumatized, etc., what exactly are they saying? And what I found with a lot of the conversation is that these words are surface level. There's a much more, for your growth and your benefit, a much more complex underlying layer to trauma, traumatized, etc. Some of the leading YouTubers on this are Gabor Mate and one I found that I really enjoyed, Tim Fletcher. Both are actually out of Canada, and there's quite a bit of great information out there and a lot of information on how dealing with trauma, healing from trauma, it really helps with becoming whole and being able to behave and function in the way that you want to. And that's why it's a very important topic that I want to get into. And starting out, definition of trauma, I thought really interesting. Let's go with where it came from, more on the physical side, physical trauma. So you have like a blunt force, or you have like a piercing force, and it's physical damage to the body. And it's so intense, so shocking. It gets that body response going on. To the point of where it could cripple you, or it definitely damages you. It could possibly kill you, and definitely will scar you for the most part, and then possible brain damage from blunt trauma. And so it's the incident. It's the thing happening, and it's not a little tap. It's a big whammy. So emotional trauma is the same thing, but pretty much on an emotional level. It is a piercing emotional experience. It is a blunt, destructive emotional experience. Having your heart broken, being devastated, being filled with sorrow, going through a horrible experience, possibly losing somebody, being insulted to your core, being ashamed. All of these things can create really intense emotional trauma, and there's even worse examples. So I thought that was really interesting because when someone says, I have trauma, there's all these thoughts and beliefs that come along with that. But what it really gets down to is they have been through an experience. That experience has lasting effects, but that's not what they're communicating to you. So I'm going to nerd out on words for a second. Now, with these intense situations that hurt so deeply, just think like in a physical sense, if you have trauma, then that could really limit your ability to move. That could, if you have a broken leg, you're not walking very well. And I don't, want to get too far into this, but the younger it happens, the more it hurts. A child, if their leg is broken, they may be crippled. Someone who's much older, their leg is broken, they probably set it and heal from it. And so emotional trauma in a child has a much more damaging effect potential, right? It can rewire the brain, change the way they do life. And I would really think about those two in a similar way, the physical and the emotional, and why child trauma is really, coming up to the surface in the forefront of the topic. And something I want to dip into really quick is traumatized. I've been traumatized. That traumatized me. People say that a lot. And it brings with it a lot of different thoughts. What does this necessarily mean when someone's saying they're traumatized? Well, if you look at the definition, physically, to traumatize something is just to cut it or to hit it really hard. So in an emotional sense, it is the act of creating the emotional damage, the event that created trauma. So traumatized just simply means that trauma has been done. So at this point, when you think about those words like trauma and traumatized, we still haven't talked about the negative outcomes of this event. We've explained that something has happened. Something really bad has happened, and maybe we need to pay attention to that. But we haven't described or gotten into or used language that talk about these lasting negative effects that are making life so hard. And that's where things get a little more complicated, and there are a few medical terms that help us get into it. Think of post-traumatic stress disorder, the much more popular one. I remember hearing a lot about this around the Iraq War after 9/11. And to me, it was the big bomb goes off and it hurts the soldier's buddy. And It's such an intense, uncontrollable, terrifying experience that now when that soldier hears a car door shut, he gets a physical and mental reaction that is very difficult to control. He may even go into a very uncontrollable stress response where he thinks he's in a combat zone. And so this situation is created, and this is a very simplistic explanation. This is my understanding of it. So calm down, critics. And so that event has created something inside of him that is difficult to control. And we can see how that makes the soldier's life difficult. And we've heard stories and whatnot. And then so another term that is more on the maybe common person path, the common man, common woman, is a term complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And it's coming to the forefront of knowledge and understanding in the medical world. I think it's still struggling a little bit to get accepted in the same way that post-traumatic stress disorder has been accepted. But complex post-traumatic stress disorder, as I understand it, is a series of negative events that happens over a very long period of time. And because of that, these stress responses that aren't healthy are developed. Think like a rewiring of the brain, a rewiring of the body. It's all these experiences happening over and over and over again that rewire how someone responds to them. And when they're out of that, they respond the same way, even if the person is acting in a similar way and not even meaning what originally happened to them. So the issue here is you have all this stress, which causes, all kinds of issues come from stress. It focus and even talk about how it can physically cause issues. You have all this stress created over situations and scenarios that aren't really threatening, but the person who has it doesn't really know that. It's hard for them to understand that situation. Like, the way I would explain it is I have tetanitis, I have ringing in my ear. And so that just kind of seems normal to me. I've had it for a while. Can't really remember what it was like to live without ringing in my ear. And doesn't everybody have that? Doesn't everyone cope with that and deal with that? So CPTSD rewires the brain, really rewires the person's understandings of their environment. And it creates a lot of stress. And this could be very in your face. I'm aware of it stress. This could be more subconscious stress. And an example I would give is think about someone who grows up in a house with a dad who's very authoritarian. He's very aggressive. He has a short fuse. So if you make him mad, you're really in trouble, and it's easy to make him mad. And now this person thinks all grown males are scary because all grown males are going to discipline me and whatnot. I've lived with it for 10 years. And so now this person's thinking that every single male I run into is just really got to be careful around them. So now all male teachers are scary, all male bosses are scary. You run into a random male on the side of the road just going about his business, and he says, "Hey, good day," and you're like, this guy is going to freaking yell at me if I say the wrong thing. That's a quick example of complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And so when you get that, you magnify it, you make it subconscious, difficult to understand, it really can create some problems. It can hold you back from dealing with the world in a way that you want. Now you have all this stress from regular things that you have to manage, you have to somehow get peace from, if possible. You can see that CPTSD with trauma really can cause some issues. So CPTSD or any kind of reaction similar to that is where I'm going to focus a lot of my talk. I think that's what a lot of us may experience to some degree or another. And what is it like to deal with it? What is it like to come to a place of awareness? How can you even go about dealing with it? Is there a way to get to not having to be so stressed about these normal things? And I believe the answer is yes. I'm going to give you kind of a step-by-step example of how to begin to identify it and what you can do to bring it to light, and then work to rewire the brain and get to a more healthier place. So starting off, really important to understand that a lot of these situations are difficult to bring into full awareness, meaning they're more subconscious. They're more stealthy or subvert. And so the example I'm going to give is a really angry guy. He's not angry all the time. He's not always just like seething with anger. But every now and then, his wife or a boss or a family member, whatever, will say something and he just explodes, screaming, yelling, cussing, rah, 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 just the worst person to be around. Afterwards, he feels pretty bad. He says he's sorry and all that. And people get back to normal. But he, thinks, this is a little out of hand. Like, yeah, what they said or did, it hurt my feelings, but I don't understand why I'm having such a strong response to it. And so then we have to begin to ask questions. We have to dig deeper, kind of peel back the layers. And so what we'd ask him is, okay, so what is it about what that family member, your wife, said that made you so angry, that set off such a reaction? And the response might be something like, well, I felt like I wasn't important. I felt like I was marginalized. I wasn't being listened to. And I don't know why, but that just made me so angry. And the more we talked and the more that wasn't addressed, I just got even angrier. And then I started, cussing and doing all this stuff. And you go, okay, I got you. So you felt like you're marginalized. You felt like you weren't important. Let's start going backwards. Let's start, digging deeper. Because that would make someone angry, but explosive kind of doesn't make sense. And in this example, we're going to do a really easy example. He goes, well, you know what? There are a few events that I can think of. Like when I was younger, I would come home, and when my dad got home from work, I'd want to play with him, or I'd want to tell him something really cool that I learned in school, or show him how smart I was. And he just didn't have the time for me. He needed to relax. He needed to do work. And I just wasn't very important. And I can even remember when we go on trips and stuff, and I'd ask for something. I'd ask to stop somewhere, or I'd ask for a refreshment. He'd just be like, bah, bah. And so, yeah, when I was younger, I think I was marginalized a lot. And you go, okay, so I can see this pattern that when you're younger, you were made to feel unimportant. You're made to feel like a burden. You're made to feel like you don't have a voice. Yeah. And then we get to a place to where we realize, because he has gone through that hurt him, because we all have that need to be accepted or whatnot. But he was like 5 or 6, 7, whatever, really young. And now he has to prove to everybody how smart he is, how important he is, how he needs to be listened to. He's trying to fill that void because there's now a formed toxic belief. I'm not important. What I have to say doesn't matter. My needs aren't important. And he's trying to prove constantly that they are. But he doesn't ever fix the problem because he has the toxic belief. So it's just this constant work towards proving and never any healing. And then, because there's that toxic belief, there's that wound, when someone either accidentally or intentionally marginalizes him, it starts to hit some triggers, and he gets this really big, huge, angry response, and he can't control it. He doesn't know what's going on, and he's trying just to ignore it, push it aside. He can't fix it. And so you find this hidden problem. You find this hidden toxic belief that's really making his life a mess, and it's really making it hard to have a close relationship with him because you don't know if he's going to explode or not. So that's an example of how you can go through the layers to find a core belief that's really causing issues, that's born out of the trauma. Really short, really fast, really sweet, to the point. Then really, you just work on rewiring that. I have this horrible belief about myself, and it's not true, and I need to rewire that. And the way that really helps, and it's a little difficult, is to get into an environment where people treat you with love, people treat you with respect, people want to hear what you have to say, and seek out more of that. And that's extremely helpful because the experience will get into the mind. Oh no, these people do think I'm important. I don't need to be so defensive and aggressive. And I can change my belief into that I am worth listening to, and realize that some people just aren't going to listen to me. And some people will have an accident. Maybe they're busy, maybe it's hard for them to appear that they really care. But that's just circumstantial. But you also have to realize there are some people that they're going to just put negativity into you. And those people you probably want to begin to distance yourself from, because those people will reinforce a toxic belief. So I hope this conversation over trauma, some of the definitions, giving an illustration of how it gets buried with the stress disorders and can cause long-term issues and really get in the way of you being able to healthfully interact with the world and achieve your goals. I mean, this really gets very widespread. We can talk addiction, we can talk stress, we can talk anxiety, we can talk anger. So many different things can be bred out of this. And so for you, the application that I would challenge you with, that I put myself through too, whenever I find myself doing something that I feel like I can't control, is go through these steps. Ask yourself, is there a behavior inside of myself that really seems kind of odd, that I don't feel like I can control it? And if there is, then start going through those questions. What feeling, what situation led to what I did, led to my behavior? Then you can begin getting the clues. You're finding the clues. Oh, it was this disrespect, or it was this fear, it was this insecurity. Okay, when was that born? Is that early in onset? Is that something that kind of happened and you lost sight of it? It was buried in yesteryear. It was suppressed, maybe buried. And if so, look into it. What's the message that I received in this scenario? Was this repeated through my life? And then I think you'll begin to find what I call the core toxic beliefs. And this is where you go, wow, that taught me this belief that I'm not valuable. And when you have those core toxic beliefs identified, then you can start the real action of rewiring your brain, getting into healthy environments, finding people that will guide you to thinking differently. It takes effort. And if you can do it on your own, more power to you. If you can sit and reflect and process through this and get the information that you need and begin to put in practice some of these tips to heal from that core toxic belief, to stop believing that core toxic belief, and to become whole, fantastic. That's wonderful. But if it's really hard and stressful, because some people find really nasty things at the end of their trauma journey and search, then I recommend, finding somebody you trust, finding a therapist, finding a coach, whatnot. Find somebody you can process this through with, because the healing will absolutely be worth it. It'll set you on a great path, and it will remove some of the barriers that have really, really been causing you a lot of trouble. My goal is to see you fully healed, doing fantastic, and I think confronting trauma and learning more about it, becoming more self-aware, is a great direction to take yourself in. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.